I'm a Pisces. I'm a walking contradiction. But as a reminder, you and I are surrounded by superficial internet babies who reaffirm social engineering garbage and a number of other propaganda campaigns. Typically speaking, what they'll do is they'll reinforce a phony jurisdiction, a phony narrative, an adult fairy tale in place to subjugate the masses, and they don't realize it. They've been polarized by the Hegelian dialectic, which is blue versus red, conquer and divide. It's bred in circuses because usually it's dressed up as entertainment in one form or another. You'll be sold a narrative and there'll be a joke in there. It'll be dressed up as satirical to some degree. So you'll stick around, you'll listen to the entire message, and then you'll repeat that garbage. Usually Hegelian dialectic narratives are sold to you based on you having a dog in the race. Based on skin color, creed, superficial shit. What I've said one too many times, the most superficial thing under the sun you could wax poetic about is skin color. Now, with all those disclaimer statements aside, if you sat through any of this and might consider some of the words I took time and energy to relate to you, this is something you'll hear quite often. You are on native land, da-da-da-da-da, right? Native Americans, traditionally speaking, did not believe in the ownership of land. This reinforces the concept that you could, in fact, purchase land, or you do have a stake in it. You claim the land as yours. It clashes with what Native American belief systems once shopped around, once believed in, and as far as I know, still technically hold water, but superficial internet babies really want to repeat this shit because they have a dog in the race. Not all, but some. Even a superficial Google search will tell you this much. No, Native Americans traditionally did not believe in individual private ownership of land. Instead, they viewed it as a communal and sacred resource to be stewarded and lived with, not owned or sold like a commodity. But meanwhile, on the DARPA internet, shit flies and people love it. Poorly put. What the fuck do I know? Despite what some of you will assume, I truly do mean well. But you and I are surrounded by people who are not thinking, they are reacting. Here's what I just knocked out. Dear superficial internet babies, Native Americans did not believe in the ownership of land. Messages like this reinforce phony jurisdictions in place to subjugate the masses. In other words, and there should be a comma, land is not a commodity. Pull your head out of your ass. And here's one of the numerous things you will see all the fucking time. You gotta also remember some Native American tribes did raid other, tribes and murdered and raped and did horrible things to people and took their shit and it's not just, the fill in the blank, whoever you want to pit yourself against. There's a lot of bad people out there and there's a lot of good people out there. But this is what people are shopping around, and this is propaganda in a number of ways. This is why 12,000 people have seen it, and 14 people were, they were so taken by this, they thought it was a good idea to repost it. It should terrify you. And if one of these slides in here misleads you, all of them are crap. That's how it works. In other words, you would not repackage this and then show other people the propaganda. You could take a screenshot and you could read each one of these, you could run through it. The post as a whole babbles about colonizers and all this other garbage. That's propaganda in a number of ways. You can't steal land that you don't have ownership of because you don't believe in ownership. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's a slippery slope. Because a lot of horrible shit happened. A lot of horrible things happened. It did. And I don't disagree with people who, would also say that horrible things took place that shouldn't have. But if you and I are surrounded by more good people than bad people who are willing to do the right thing and are thinking for themselves, more often than not, good things would come about, opposed to what we're currently working with and what's coming. If you're picking up what I'm putting down. In other words, you and I are still not surrounded by smart people willing to do the right thing. You could think of the three little pigs and the big bad wolf. And you remember how one of them fortified their house? Proactive measures. So, come what may, you would have something in place. We have not done that. And technically, the Native American tribes, in many ways, were too trusting and or they didn't have the foresight, which is sad to say, but this is how these things come to pass. You could also think of things like Mount Rushmore, how they gave the other side, the benefit of the doubt, and the treaties were broken. Mount Rushmore, what is Mount Rushmore today, should not exist the way it does. It was defaced, and it's deplorable. But it's because people with good hearts gave them the benefit of the doubt and or finally just said, okay, we'll make a deal with you. And that treaty was broken. The point is to plan ahead, get your ducks in a row, and try to, foreseeably anticipate any and all, problems in the future. But people aren't doing that. And people didn't do that. And that's why horrible shit comes to light. Think about the algorithm for a minute. The only reason, and I know I already said this essentially, but it's very important. The only reason you see things like this is because part of it is fucking propaganda. That is very fucking important to appreciate because that means that you and I are being manipulated. Anything electronic is connected to the AI. That's a red flag. The AI would not exist if you and I were surrounded by smart people willing to do the right thing. Now, best of all, I know people who like this post because it sure sounds good, but you got to think for yourself in order to be able to recognize things and have eyes to see. If you don't have eyes to see, you're certainly not going to do the right thing because you can't challenge yourself, which means you can't challenge other people who are fucking things up for you and I. 12,000 people thought this sounds good. That should upset you. But what the fuck do I know? You probably won't see this because I'm censored on the DARPA internet. By the way, this is also propaganda. Our masters want us to tear apart the system that currently stands, which is the only thing holding society together, and I am referring to capitalism. I'm not talking about the way it stands. That's poorly put, I know. Capitalism should be mom and pop. It should be based on community, not communism, not a shade of fascism. And there's nothing but proof. Hitler openly stated that the color scheme of the Nazi flag represents communism. The original name of the Nazi party was renamed the Communist Party. You could look into this. Communism is a shade of fascism. And if you assume otherwise, you assume a great many things. Back to point. What you consider capitalism, there's a lot of agendas currently afoot to quite literally promote the death of capitalism. It's commerce. It's the only thing holding society together by and large. And it should be mom and pop. It should be wholesome grassroots, etc., etc. But it's not because you and I are not surrounded by smart people willing to do the right thing. They go along with the flow. Our masters, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile, and things will get worse and worse and worse and wildly out of hand, and that's exactly what it is. So yeah, it rubs you raw, and it doesn't seem right. It's not right because people aren't doing the right thing to see that it's right. That's why it's wrong. So images like this, what you see on the right in this image is another flag, which should not exist because Palestine is really the land in question. It always has been. It's Canaan, Palestine, the land of Canaan. And that's an entirely different ball of wax. So appreciate this. The Republic fell during the Civil War because the Civil War is the prime example of the Hegelian dialectic. The Republic was dead and done officially in 1871. That's when America became a corporation in all capital letters. In other words, I'm saying we're getting further and further away based on these time frames from the American flag being what you were told it is all of your days. It hasn't been. But people were told that it's, freedom and democracy. So 1871 marks when America became a corporation in all capital letters. Citizens became debt slaves in 1913. What I'm saying is you can't be free and be a debt slave. And if you're a citizen, you identify as a debt slave because all currency became debt-based. After 1913, when the Federal Reserve was established under the pretense of being both voluntary and temporary. You can look these things up. You probably can't Google what I'm telling you by and large, But you can reason as much out if you're capable of connecting the dots, because what I'm talking about does lead somewhere, it does mean something, and it flies in the face of all the phony narratives people have been told, sold, and urged to repeat, and they do. Now, if you repeat the phony propaganda, what you leave online will probably be circulated because the algorithm promotes propaganda. If you repeat what I'm talking about, you will likely be censored. And that's a telltale sign you're doing the right thing. It's also absolutely terrifying because freedom of speech no longer exists. Because people stopped calling censorship and started calling it shadow banning, canceling, polarizing, positive vibes only, and a number of other names because they weren't thinking for themselves, and you and I are not surrounded by smart people willing to do the right thing. I like to say that often because people feel that things are getting bad and they're exponentially getting worse, but they don't realize that they're contributing to it, and they're not willing to challenge themselves and realize as much. So what people should be doing is being concerned with reconstituting the Republic. Personally, I would still refer to it as the Republic instead of renaming it something else, because that's how our masters work. What I'm driving at with that is our masters want us, and I already said this partially, our masters want us to tear down the system that currently stands so that everybody goes apeshit, everything falls apart, and then our masters can swoop in. I know you probably assume you don't have masters. Most people do. And it's absolutely ridiculous because you sign a W-2 when you go to get a job. You have to. And that makes you consent. You honestly do so. You consent to a third party stealing part of your labor. What you should recoup based on 100% of your labor. It's absurd. You have masters. We put bread on their table. But they're going to swoop in after everything falls apart, and then they're going to say, would you like to be part of New America? All you have to do is put this chip in your hand or your head or something along those lines. They're building this up in incremental steps. But the big takeaway is we're working towards social credit slavery. That's what's on the horizon. That's what all signs point to. Recently, our masters did away with pennies, which makes absolutely no sense. It's inefficient. It's ridiculous because you can't make change anymore. And that's because our masters do not want people. They're discouraging people from using money. It is divisive. It is a red flag. And most people are going to go along with the flow, and it's going to get worse. Ironically, these are the same people who claim that capitalism is bad. But they're going to do these things. I know a lot of people who will say that capitalism is bad and death to capitalism and all this other stuff because they'll repeat anything they're spoon-fed or that was turned into a bumper sticker, a patch, a sticker sold on Etsy. But they won't think for themselves. These are the same kids that use Bitcoin. Let that sink in. Does that make sense? No, it does not make a lick of fucking sense because nobody sensible would use digital currency in any form or way because it's a clear and present agenda if you think about it. But people can't connect the dots anymore. Most people can't think critically. Our masters are dumbing people down. This is why you're bombarded with one distraction after another when you click on things online. This is why emojis were written into free social media platforms, which is a red flag. You use emojis and you articulate yourself less and less and less. That's going to rewire how your brain works. That's what I'm talking about. These are, technically now it's old school MK Ultra sub-project tactics is what I'm trying to spit out. And that's what the internet is now. That's what the DARPA internet was always set up to be. That's why most of the MK Ultra projects or the sub-projects, if you look into it, have to do with manipulating the brain, the human brain, understanding how it works so that you can compromise it. And that's exactly what's taking place. That's why you and I have access to free social media. This is also a red flag. Our masters also openly stated as much. They told us what they were going to do many years ago in a Davos panel, and that's why AOL discs were free. You sign up for a cell phone, you get a free you sign up for a plan, you get a free cell phone, and then you profile yourself on free social media because it's entertainment, right? You want to be connected to your family and your friends. It's okay. It's totally benign. And then over the years, what? You give them an inch and they take a mile. They started ratcheting it down. They started reading all of the messages. This is just like tapping all phones and listening to all phone calls. which I guarantee happens now that it's not just a bunch of landlines. What do I know? These things are being squirreled away and hidden on servers. You and I are being profiled in deeper ways, apart from what you and I have consented to and have already accomplished for our masters, so they didn't have to. I mean, it's J. Edgar Hoover's wet dream. And that's the way of things now. And it's terrifying. I should also mention this. America, the District of Columbia, that's the bottom of the trilateral city-states. The middle is Roma, specifically the Catholic Church in Italy. And the top of the food chain in terms of the trilateral city-states that pull our strings. That's the UK. It's known as the city, the crown. It's a banking financial district. The middle is social control having to do with religion, specifically Catholicism. And the bottom is the military-industrial complex. It's the military might. You see, these three aspects control our lives, which is why if you Google it, you're going to be told it's a conspiracy theory. Don't forget, when JFK was shot, our masters cooked up conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorist to defame anybody who spoke out against the official findings of the Warren Commission. Now, if you flash forward to 2001, when people flat out, could spot bullshit and spoke out against, the official findings of 9/11, the same thing happened. Because our masters' tactics work. They're not terribly clever, but they are effective. People still rattled off, "You're a conspiracy theorist." Now, that's also since turned into, tinfoil hats and other bullshit. That's no different from rattling off conspiracy theorist and conspiracy theory. Nobody sensible would do that. Just to be clear. But how many people do you see that identify as that, rattle that off? It's the name of their account online because they are not thinking for themselves. You and I are not surrounded by smart people, unfortunately. They could change this fact, but they aren't willing to. Because most people aren't thinking for themselves to begin with, which means they haven't challenged themselves, which means they're certainly not going to challenge each other. They're marching in lockstep, doing the wrong thing. That's why things are bad. So, these three aspects of the trilateral city-states that control our lives. You got the money on the top, you got the religion in the middle, and you got the force on the bottom. In other words, not the, space propaganda, the force. And based on the fact I said space propaganda, the pseudo-intellectual flat earth is equally bullshit. And you would have figured this out if you pulled your head out of your ass. But people are marching in lockstep. You can't use either of those outlines as a tool. I rattled this shit off a lot. And very few people see the videos. It's very frustrating. But you never know. Maybe today's the day. So, the military, right? You don't do what our masters want. They have how many different tiers to the military? You got the Navy, the Army, the Marines, you got the Coast Guard, and you have the dogs of the state, the police force, to back up all of this phony fucking garbage that you and I were born into. It's a slave system through and through. You don't have shackles. You don't know the name of our masters because you're never going to see their faces. You're never going to know their names. That shit is not on the internet, just to be clear. You might hear about Rothschilds and Rockefellers, low-level bullshit. You might see stewards of the District of Columbia, Obama and Trump. But the people who are truly pulling our strings, you do not know their names, you do not know their addresses, you do not know what they look like. Because if you were pulling everybody's strings, would you put that information out there and compromise yourself? Fuck no. Because the people who have manipulated our lives since the day you were born, since the day I was born, they thought ahead. They've been working against the masses, as far as I can tell, since the 16th century. That's roughly when this kicked off in a big way and things started being, what I keep saying, scrubbed from the internet. But what I'm referring to is our masters ran all over what people consider the world. Really, it's a realm, and they destroyed sites of antiquity. They fucked up the clay tablets, old books. Keep in mind, they also squirreled some of this shit away, as far as I can tell. But they erased these things. They destroyed things that did reflect reality in a big way, having to do with where we are and what this is. That's the big reason why they did this. So that they could sell people, first the flat earth, then the globe theory, then the flat earth again, because our master's tactics aren't terribly clever, but they are effective. All right, this is when I say, as always, what the fuck do I know? I just wasted a lot of time and energy repeating some of the same things. If you saw this, I'm surprised, because I am censored. What the fuck do I know?